Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, May 9th, 2025. Tax complexity now costs the U.S. economy over $546 billion annually. That's the title of a study prepared by the Tax Foundation, and here are some of the findings highlighted in that study. Now, the direct cost of the federal income tax code is the $4.9 trillion in federal taxes that consume 17% of U.S. gross domestic product. The economists at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development have determined that individual and corporate income taxes are the most harmful for economic growth. Now, a less direct cost is the precious time taking out of our lives to comply with a Byzantine tax code that requires billions of hours completing mountains of IRS paperwork and tax returns. In 2023, Americans filed 271.5 million tax returns. Of these, nearly 71%, or 192.3 million, were individual and corporate income tax returns, while another 36.3 million were employment tax returns. According to the latest estimates from the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, Americans will spend more than 7.9 billion hours complying with IRS tax filing and reporting requirements in 2024. Now, this is equal to 3.8 million full-time workers doing nothing but tax return paperwork. Now, that's roughly equal to the population of Los Angeles and nearly 46 times the workforce at the IRS. Now, as an alternative way to see the huge additional compliance burden imposed on businesses, consider that the IRS estimates it takes 13 hours on average to comply with the main individual tax form, that's the 1040. 9 hours for individuals without business income and 24 hours for individuals with business income. Now, as bad as that may sound to spend 3 full days filling income tax returns out, corporations have it much worse. The IRS estimates it takes 105 hours on average to comply with a Form 1120. That's the main form for taxable corporations. For small corporations, it takes 55 hours. For large ones, 830 hours. That's more than 20 weeks. Now, assuming a reasonable hourly wage, the 7.9 billion hours Americans spend complying with the tax code cost the economy roughly $413 billion in lost productivity. In addition, the IRS estimates that Americans spend roughly $133 billion annually in out-of-pocket costs to comply with the tax code. This brings the total compliance cost to $546 billion, or nearly 2% of GDP. Now, the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs estimates show that taxpayer compliance now comprises 66% of the 12 billion total hours Americans spend complying with federal paperwork and 72% of the $184 billion in government-wide out-of-pocket costs for regulations. In conclusion, when you read the information above, you are likely confused and angry that Congress has allowed this abominable income tax system not only to continue, but to become more burdensome every year. Their inaction might be more understandable if there was not an alternative that would eliminate the wasted hours and expenses of the present income tax code. However, the plain truth is that there is an alternative that eliminates the burden on individual citizens and reduces the burden on businesses by over 90%. That alternative is the fair tax, a simple and progressive national retail sales tax on the retail purchases of new goods and services. In addition to removing the compliance burden on Americans, the fair tax will also tax imports and provide tax credits to U.S. exporters like all of our trading partners. It eliminates the need for most tariffs, it brings jobs back to the United States, eliminates federal taxes up to the poverty level, requires no tax returns for individuals, clearly shows the federal taxes hidden in the prices of the goods we purchase today. The fair tax also creates greater economic growth, brings in capital that allows productivity increases and higher wages, eliminates lobbyists and politicians from selling tax benefits that harm the rest of us, and most of all, the fair tax eliminates the Internal Revenue Service. Now, we need to move now and put a stake in the heart of the income tax and the IRS so that they cannot be easily resurrected by a subsequent administration. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and that returns freedom to the American people. Now, it's imperative, though, that we don't replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elites. We must let Congress and the President know that the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the fair tax. Now, make no mistake about it, the fair tax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It will strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the fair tax will be fierce and unrelenting. And don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well, so that no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. Now, this is going to take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we also need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information about the fair tax to President Trump, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or actually investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.